This happened just over a month ago. I'm 32 and love being outdoors. I've camped a lot before, but never in the Appalachians. I needed some time off work to find inspiration, so I picked a remote campsite. I thought the quiet would help me clear my head and connect with nature. I never thought I'd still be thinking about it. The first night I set up my tent. Everything felt normal. It was calm and I was excited about the week ahead. Around midnight I heard something outside. I thought maybe it was a raccoon. I unzipped my tent and peeked out. The forest looked still and silent under the moonlight. I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I went back to sleep feeling a bit foolish. As the days passed, strange things started happening. My water bottle went missing. I was sure I had left it right next to my sleeping bag. I searched everywhere, but it was gone. My food containers were moved too. One morning, I woke up to see my snacks scattered like someone had rummaged through them. I felt uneasy, like someone was watching me. I tried to convince myself there were logical explanations. Maybe another camper was nearby. But I started to see shapes at the edge of my vision, figures darting between the trees. I thought I was imagining things. The more I shrugged them off, the more they lingered in my mind. My heart raced every time I felt that chill of fear. I noticed strange symbols etched into the trees around my sight. At first, I thought they were just weird pieces of bark, but after a few days, I realized they were different. They didn't look like anything familiar, more like markings. I felt a cold shiver each time I spotted one. By the end of the week, I was questioning everything. Maybe this was all a prank. I wasn't just a little scared. I was on edge. Or perhaps I was losing my grip on reality. Was I truly alone in those woods? The more I reflected, the more it felt like something unsettling was happening that I couldn't explain. I kept replaying my experiences in my mind, trying to understand what was real. On my last night, I saw someone standing just outside my tent. I thought, maybe it's another camper. I opened the flap, my hands trembling. But the spot was empty. My heart pounded. Then I heard whispering, soft and unclear. I turned back to my camp. As I stepped inside, a chill shot through me. Something was out there. And it knew I was alone. I couldn't shake the feeling. I could almost hear it breathing, the silence thick around me. I felt trapped, like I should run but couldn't. The shadows danced in the corners of my mind as I fought to stay awake. Finally, I crawled into my sleeping bag, heart racing. I told myself I would leave at first light. But when I closed my eyes, I could still feel those eyes watching me, waiting. I never got to see what was out there, but I knew it was close. I felt it. I still think about that week, and I wonder if I really was alone. The next morning I woke with a knot in my stomach. The sun was just breaking through the trees, but the beauty of the dawn felt haunting. I pushed myself to get out of the tent. I needed a break from that feeling of dread. As I packed up my gear, I couldn't shake the thought that I had to get out of there. While I was rolling up my sleeping bag, I noticed the strange symbols again. There were more of them than I remembered. It was like they had multiplied overnight. My heart raced. I grabbed my phone, but I realized there was no service. I hadn't seen another person in days. I was completely alone. I decided to explore a bit more. Maybe taking a walk would distract me from the weirdness. I stepped away from my campsite, keeping my eyes peeled for anything out of the ordinary. The forest felt oppressive, like the trees were closing in. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. As I wandered off the usual path, I stumbled upon a small clearing. There was a circle of stones in the center, arranged in a perfect ring. Above them, the branches twisted together like a tangled web, blocking out the sky. I crouched down to get a better look. Inside the circle lay a collection of pine cones, twigs, and what looked like an animal skull. It felt wrong. I backed away, panic bubbling inside me. I turned around to leave the clearing, but the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. I felt it again, eyes on me. I glanced back, but nothing stirred. Just shadows and the sound of leaves rustling. I hurried back toward my campsite, the brush crunching loudly under my feet. I wanted to scream, to make noise, to wake up from this nightmare. When I reached my tent, I discovered something shocking. My backpack was unzipped and all my food was gone. I was sure I had locked it up. I checked my cooking equipment, but everything was put away neatly as if someone had been there while I wasn't looking. I fumbled for my water bottle in the side pocket, but it wasn't there. I searched everywhere, but it had vanished as well. My heart raced. It felt like someone was taking things from me, piece by piece. I wanted to gather everything and run, but I needed to figure out what was happening. I stood there trying to gather my thoughts when a sound stopped me cold. Whispering. It wrapped around me, coming from different directions. Panic settled in my chest. I had to get out. I looked around, feeling disoriented, unsure which way to go. I grabbed my things and made a decision. I was leaving the campsite, but just as I turned to head down the path, something caught my eye. It was a figure at the edge of the trees, barely visible but unmistakable. It stood just watching me. My breath caught in my throat. Then it stepped forward and everything went dark. I woke up again, but this time it was different. I wasn't in my tent. The familiar smell of pine and earth was replaced by something stale, like damp wood. Blinking at the dim light, I struggled to remember how I got here. My body felt heavy, and a dull headache throbbed in my temples. As my eyes adjusted, I realized I was in a small wooden cabin. The air was thick and cold. The walls were bare except for peeling paint and an old chair in the corner, which looked like it hadn't been touched in years. Fear crept in again. How did I get here? I tried to sit up, but my body didn't respond. It was like I was anchored to the floor. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to focus. My phone was gone, but I patted my pockets and discovered my trusty knife still clipped to my belt. That was something. The whispering still echoed in my mind, a haunting reminder that I wasn't alone in this place. I shifted my weight, trying to stand. My legs felt weak, but I pushed myself to my feet. There was a door to my left, slightly ajar. I moved towards it, each step heavy and uncertain. Inside the cabin, everything felt wrong, like the walls were closing in on me. I nodded to myself. I had to get out. I pushed the door open and the hinges creaked ominously. Outside, the day was bright, but there was an unnerving silence. No birds, no wind, nothing. I stood on the threshold, peering cautiously into the clearing before me. The trees loomed tall and foreboding, casting long shadows that stretched towards the cabin. My campsite was nowhere to be seen. Panic surged through me again. Had someone taken me? Where was my backpack? I stepped out, drawn to a rustling sound just beyond the bushes. It was faint but insistent, like something or someone was moving. I crouched low, heart pounding in my chest, and crept closer to the noise. The gut feeling that I was being hunted returned, raw and intense. What I saw made my stomach drop. A figure, a woman or something resembling one, was crouched by a large tree. Her hair was a tangled mess, and her skin seemed to blend with the tree's bark. She turned her head, and when her eyes met mine, a chill slithered down my spine. They were hollow, dark voids that seemed to draw in the faint light around her. I stepped back instinctively, my instincts screaming at me to run. But my legs froze. This was the first real encounter I'd had, and I wasn't sure what she wanted. Then she raised her hand, and in her palm, there was something small and shiny. It glinted in the dim light. It looked like my water bottle. The moment stretched and I could hardly process what was happening. She took a step toward me and I finally found my legs. I turned and sprinted into the trees, branches tearing at my clothes and skin. I didn't dare look back. That's when I heard it. A loud thud from behind me. My breath hitched. Something was coming. I ran harder, the pounding thud behind me echoing through the trees. My mind raced, every scenario crashing into each other. What was pursuing me? I didn't have the luxury of answers. I dodged branches and jumped over fallen logs, trying to put as much distance between myself and that hollow-eyed figure. My lungs burned. I needed to focus. If I could find a path, a trail back to safety, I couldn't keep running blindly. I tried to orient myself, scanning the trees for familiar shapes that might lead me somewhere I recognized. Instead, Everything felt unchanged and alien. Then a sharp pain shot up my leg. I stumbled, catching myself on a tree trunk. I glanced down to see blood trickling from a cut on my calf. Panic surged and I pushed off the tree to keep moving. My heart raced even faster. I didn't want to stop. Not now. But then, through the maze of trees, I saw a flicker of movement. A shadow shifted further ahead, slipping behind a large boulder. I hesitated. Was it just my mind playing tricks, or was there something else out there? My instincts screamed at me to keep moving, but curiosity tugged me closer. I approached the boulder cautiously, heart hammering in my chest. I peered around it, half hoping for a friendly face, but instead, I found an old backpack, torn and dirtied, just like mine. It was a small relief, but it raised more questions. Had someone else been here? Was that why I was taken? I dropped down to check it further. Inside, I found a worn map, crumpled and faded. Scrawled across it were notes and strange symbols, some of which looked like warnings. "Do not wander at dusk," one note read ominously. "Beware the hollow eyes." My heart sank. The warnings felt personal. I pushed the backpack away in disgust. I didn't have time for this. I had to keep moving. Still, the sound of branches snapping echoed closer, the thudding growing louder. I abandoned the backpack and bolted again, moving away from the boulder. Ahead, the trees seemed to thin out. I squinted through the branches, searching for any sign of civilization. But it was just more wilderness, unyielding and eerie. Suddenly, a shadow darted across my path. A flash of movement so quick I could hardly register it. My blood turned to ice. Was it the woman? Or something worse? I didn't want to think about it anymore. I just needed to get to safety. Then came another chilling thud, followed by a low, guttural growl that rumbled through the air. It was close now, too close. My instincts pushed me into a full sprint, adrenaline surging through my veins. As I dashed through the trees, something brushed against my arm. I jerked away, but it was just a branch. I had to keep moving faster and faster. My mind screamed at me to scream, to make a sound, but fear choked any noise in my throat. Finally, I broke through the trees. I stumbled into a clearing, breathless and trembling. The ground was covered in thick moss, and ahead was an unnatural pile of rocks, stacked carefully as if by human hands. That's when I saw it, the figure standing atop the pile, silent and watching me. My heart dropped to my stomach. It was her. Then I noticed something glinting again, shining in the dim light. It was a flashlight, my flashlight. But before I could process it, her eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that held me in place as the ground trembled beneath my feet. I was trapped. Just as panic surged in my chest again, something moved behind me in the woods. I could hear the footsteps closing in, and everything went dark. When the darkness swallowed me whole, I felt a jolt of panic. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my ears. It was as if I had stepped through a curtain into another world. The sudden silence was jarring. The rustling leaves, the growling creature, everything vanished in an instant. I blinked, adjusting to the gloom. For a terrifying moment I thought I was blind, but I could see the faint outline of the rocks and the eerie figure still perched atop them. I forced my feet to move again, each step a battle against the urge to freeze. I needed to escape, but the weight of the moment pressed down on me. "Run," I whispered to myself, but my body felt heavy. I turned cautiously, scanning the area behind me. The footsteps had ceased, replaced by an unsettling stillness. Had whatever was chasing me decided to go in another direction? Or was it merely lying in wait? I took a step back toward the clearing, startled by something soft beneath my foot. I glanced down and my stomach turned. It was a discarded piece of clothing, a tattered shirt, stained and torn. I quickly looked away, my mind racing with the dreadful implications. Had someone else met a fate worse than mine? With determination flaring in my chest, I stepped away from the pile of rocks and the figure still watching me. I had to keep moving, even if I didn't know where I was going. My leg throbbed from the cut, but I pushed through the pain, each breath heavy and labored. I heard a soft rustle in the shadows behind me. My pulse quickened, a warning bell ringing in my mind. As I turned, the figure leaped down from the rocks and landed silently on the moss. My heart seized. Did she want to help, or was she just another threat? "What do you want?" I called out, trying to sound braver than I felt. But my voice trembled, echoing into the empty space around us. She didn't answer, just stood there, her hollow eyes glimmering in the low light. Then a growl resonated again from just beyond the trees. I felt a primal urge to flee, but I was rooted in place. The figure pointed sharply into the darkness, the gesture both alarming and cryptic. "What?" I stammered. The clarity I sought wasn't coming. The forest felt alive, watching, waiting. Then something heavy crashed through the underbrush, snapping branches like twigs. I didn't wait for another cue. I turned on my heel and sprinted into the woods. My lungs screamed for air as the terrain became uneven beneath my feet. I couldn't shake the feeling of being hunted. Then, a bolt of fear shot through me as I realized I had lost sight of the clearing. The trees closed in around me, each trunk a nightmare in the dim light. I frantically searched for a path, desperate not to get trapped again. That's when I heard it. A voice low and haunting, weaving through the night. "Turn back," it called, echoing around me. I froze. Was it the woman? Or something else entirely? I had no choice but to find out, and as the shadows deepened, one question burned in my mind. Who was trying to keep me here? I took a hesitant step forward, peering into the velvety blackness that enveloped me. The voice faded, swallowed by the woods. I squinted, listening for any sound that would guide me. The growl still lingered in my memory, and with every breath, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on my back. I had to move, but in what direction? I stumbled through the thick underbrush, branches clawing at my arms like desperate hands. The fear swirling inside me danced with adrenaline. I couldn't tell if I was moving deeper into danger or back to safety. My mind raced, thoughts colliding. Should I have stayed by the rocks? Was I abandoning the woman? Then just ahead, faint flickering lights cut through the shadows. I squinted and felt my pulse quicken. A campfire? It could be a rescue or a trap. I faltered for a moment, weighing my options, but I couldn't ignore the warmth that radiated from that glow. I pressed on, taking careful steps toward the light. Every crackle from the fire sent chills down my spine, not knowing what awaited me. As I drew closer, I spotted figures huddled around the flames. Their faces were obscured in the dark, but they seemed engaged in quiet conversation, unaware of my approach. Suddenly, my foot caught on a root and I stumbled, crashing to the ground. The noise drew their attention. Heads turned sharply, illuminated briefly by the fire's dancing light. "Who's there?" rang out a commanding voice, laced with an edge of authority. I held my breath, heart racing again. I'm lost." My voice broke as I responded, fear spilling out like my breath. "I need help." The figures exchanged glances, suspicion hanging in the air. One of them leaned forward, the fire casting shadows across their face. Lost? Or running from something? My mind reeled. How could I explain the creature, the silent woman? "Both," I blurted. "There's something in the woods, I don't know what it is, but it's dangerous." They hesitated, assessing me as if I were a wild animal. The leader, tall with a rugged jaw, stood slowly scanning the trees behind me. "We've seen things here too. You're not the first." An icy chill swept over me. "What do you mean?" Somewhere among the whispers of the group, a tale was unfolding. People go missing. Strange things happen at night, but most keep to the trails, the leader explained. If you've ventured off, you might not get back. "What's out there?" I pressed, desperation lacing my words. But before he could answer, a deep rumbling growl echoed through the trees, closer than before. The group tensed, eyes wide with fear. I felt every muscle in my body clench, and I turned to look into the darkness behind me. Then everything went dark. The fire flickered and died, leaving us surrounded by an oppressive silence. My heart thudded loudly as panic surged. "What just happened?" I breathed, my voice trembling in the dark. Stay close, the leader whispered, his hand gripping my arm. Whatever is out there, it's coming. I felt the trees closing in, shadows flickering in the corners of my vision. We were no longer just lost. We were prey. In that instant, the unknown became palpable, and the hunt began. The darkness pressed in, a heavy blanket that swallowed the little warmth that remained in the air. I could hear my heart beat, loud and frenetic. The leader's grip was strong, anchoring me, but I felt the panic surge. What if whatever was out there found us before we could move? Over here! A woman's voice broke through the gloom, urgent and sharp. I turned my head towards her, the outline of her figure barely visible. There's a path. My breath caught, a spark of hope in the overwhelming darkness. The others shuffled closer, eyes scanning the shadows. We can't stay here, the leader said, his voice low but firm. We need to find some place to hide until morning. Follow me. The woman stepped forward, confidence replacing the fear in her voice. I couldn't see her face clearly, but the determined cadence of her words gave me a flicker of reassurance. We moved cautiously, the forest shifting around us. Every rustle, every snap of a twig felt amplified. The growl echoed again, a low rumble that sent us quickening our pace. Why are we running? I whispered, struggling to keep up with their long strides. What exactly lives in these woods? The leader glanced back at me, his expression grave. It's not something you want to meet. Trust us. As we ducked beneath the low branches, a flash of something moved in the corner of my eye, gray and sleek, like a shadow darting between trees. My heart raced, panic clenching my throat. I bit my lip, suppressing a scream. Stay close, the leader commanded, and I rushed after him again, pushing through the underbrush. The way wound deeper into the woods and the glow of the fire faded behind us. Minutes felt like hours. Every step pulled me further from the firelight, and the safety it seemed to promise. Finally, we stumbled into a small clearing. The moonlight broke through, casting an eerie glow, but it also illuminated the deserted campsite in front of us. We can hide here, the woman said, eyes darting around, searching for signs of threats. A fire pit lay cold and empty, surrounded by rotting logs and torn tents. It felt wrong, abandoned, but not forgotten. Does anyone stay here? I asked, looking at the remnants of a life once lived. Not anymore, the leader replied, scanning the perimeter. This was once a gathering place, but his voice trailed off. The woods seemed to hold secrets, and I could feel them pressing down. And then it happened. A loud crash echoed from the other edge of the clearing. Heavy footsteps, something massive, moved in the underbrush. My throat tightened as dread washed over me. What was that? I whispered, barely able to form the words. Stay still, he hissed. We all froze, hearts pounding in synchrony. The underbrush crackled closer, the growl shifting, growing more menacing. That's when I saw it. A hulking form stepped into the clearing, its eyes glinting with a predatory light. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen, a pulsating mass of shadow and sinew, powerful and agile. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. We can't stay here anymore, I breathed, the urgency drowning out my fear. But it was too late. The creature lunged towards us, and there was nowhere left to run. Time slowed as the creature bolted forward, its massive form blurring against the backdrop of towering trees. I instinctively dropped to the ground, instinct kicking in harder than reason. The sound of thundering footsteps echoed in my ears, reverberating through the ground like an approaching storm. Get back, the leader shouted, shoving the woman and me behind a decaying log just as the beast barreled past us, barely missing. I pressed myself against the cold earth, heart racing, breaths shallow and ragged. What is that thing? I gasped, the words spilling out before I could think. The others remained silent, eyes wide with terror. The enormity of it all threatened to swallow me whole. It's a wendigo, the woman replied, her voice shaking but determined. It should be hibernating. These woods aren't right. A what? I barely managed. It sounded like a myth. My mind struggled to grasp what she was saying. Was this real? Was I dreaming? Listen, she said, urgency bubbling in her tone. "We need to stay quiet. If it hears us." But the creature didn't need to hear us. It was already circling back, its massive frame casting a looming shadow over our hiding spot. My pulse quickened as the darkness stretched, swallowing up the faint traces of moonlight. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable. The Wendigo sniffed the air, its sharp, ghastly features visible in the moonlight. It paced unnaturally graceful despite its size, and I could see its ribs protruding from its gaunt frame. It pulsed with an energy I couldn't comprehend, and all I wished for was to be anywhere but here. "We can't stay here," the leader whispered, his eyes darting toward the tree line. "On my count, we'll bolt for the last tree." "No," the woman interrupted, eyes fierce. "We can't let it see us move, we have to stay still." Before I could protest, the menacing creature's snout lowered, and the growl echoed again. The air vibrated with a mixture of dread and power. "We can't run," I realized, the weight of my helplessness crashing over me. Suddenly, a loud snapping noise broke through the chaos. A branch, not far from me, splintered underfoot. Someone else was here. I froze, my heart plummeting. "Who's there?" I whispered. Fear thickened the air. I could barely process what was happening. "Run!" a voice cried out from the darkness, sharp and panicked. Before I could react, the Wendigo turned, eyes locking onto the new sound. A second later, chaos erupted again. A figure sprinted from the shadows, but it wasn't moving fast enough. "Run!" I screamed, pushing myself up and darting towards the edge of the clearing. I didn't know what I was running towards, only that I had to move or get swallowed by the night. The creature roared, a spine-chilling sound that reverberated through the trees. I glanced back just in time to see the will-o'-the-wisp of the figure, a man, getting caught by the beast's claw. He staggered and fell, and I felt a wave of despair wash over me. "Keep going," the leader shouted, dragging me forward. But my feet felt heavy, weighed down by the horrific scene I had just witnessed. I overshot the nearest tree, crashing into the trunk. My breath came in fits, and I tried to steady myself, the terror still gripping my heart. But just as I turned to look back at the clearing, a glimpse of movement on my left caught my eye. And just like that, I had a choice to make. I could either continue into the dark heart of the woods, or turn back toward the chaos. The decision coiled tight in my chest. My instincts screamed at me to run while I had the chance, but curiosity tugged at me. That shadow, a flicker of movement, could be salvation or another nightmare waiting to unfold. I glanced back at the clearing, half expecting the Wendigo to burst through the trees any moment. Instead, the sounds of struggle faded. It was quiet, too quiet. My heart thrummed in my ears as I shifted my gaze to the left, where I had seen the movement. Shadows danced, and the silvery light of the moon caught something glimmering on the ground. With a shaky breath, I took a cautious step toward it. The air felt heavy around me like a blanket saturated with dread. I neared the source of the shine, and my stomach dropped. There, half buried in the leaves, was a knife, its blade stained dark, perhaps with something other than rust. "What is going on?" I whispered to myself, adrenaline coursing through my veins. I picked up the knife and turned it over in my palm. It was cold and unsettling. The weight of it gave me a strange sense of comfort, even as my heart kept racing. That's when I heard it again, a rustling just beyond the trees to my right. My grip on the knife tightened. I couldn't see anything, but the forest felt alive with danger. I took a step back, ready to retreat, but then the shadows shifted again, and I saw a figure. "You!" It was the woman from before, the one who had warned us to stay quiet. "What are you doing here?" I asked, barely keeping the tremor from my voice. "I was trying to find you. We need to get away from here now." Her eyes were wide with panic. "The Wendigo will be back, and it doesn't hunt alone." "What do you mean?" I barely whispered the words, my mind racing to wrap itself around the implications. Other creatures roam these woods, things worse than that beast. They're drawn to fear. We need to follow me. Before I could respond, a howl echoed through the forest, chilling me to the bone. It was a sound that clawed at the edges of reason, sending skitters of panic racing through me. "Run!" she urged, her voice slicing through the noise. and without thinking I took off behind her, the knife clutched tightly in my fist. We dashed deeper into the woods. Branches whipped at my skin and the darkness grew thicker, wrapping around us like a living thing. As we pushed through the underbrush, the howls multiplied, mixing with the low growl of something else, something much closer. I could feel the ground shifting beneath me, as if the very earth was desperate to swallow us whole. Then, right as I thought we might find a safe path, something rushed past us through the trees. A blur, almost too quick to see. My lungs tightened with fear. What else lurked in these woods? I cast a glance over my shoulder, and I could have sworn I saw gleaming eyes watching us from the shadows. "What was that?" I gasped. The woman stole a glance back as well, but before she could answer, something lunged toward us from the darkness. "Keep moving," she shouted, but my legs felt like lead. Suddenly I remembered the knife, and it was like flipping a switch in my mind. I had to fight back. I had to survive. Then everything went dark. I jolted awake, the icy grip of the woods replaced by a heavy stillness. I was lying on the forest floor, the damp earth clinging to my back. I blinked, desperate to regain my senses, but my heart was racing, and memories crashed over me like waves. The creature, the woman, the unending darkness. I struggled to piece together the fragments of my last moments. Panic flooded my chest as I scrambled to my feet. The shadows around me felt deceptive, the trees standing like sentinels, guarding their secrets. Where was she? Had I escaped, or did I merely stumble deeper into the nightmare? A few feet away, the knife glinted in the dim light. I grabbed it instinctively, feeling its comforting weight settle in my palm. But a lingering dread gnawed at me, whispering that the danger wasn't over. As I glanced around, a rustle in the underbrush caught my attention. I held my breath, knife poised, ready to defend myself. Then, emerging into the clearing, there she was. The woman, a few leaves tangled in her wild hair, appeared almost like a ghost, a weary survivor of her own torment. "You're awake," she whispered, relief washing over her face. I thought I lost you." "What happened?" I asked, the words tumbling out in a rush. "Did we escape?" "For now," she replied, glancing over her shoulder into the darkened woods. "But we have to keep moving. There are more creatures here than just that Wendigo." I felt the air grow heavy with unspoken truths. What had we stumbled into? As if in response, a deep growl echoed through the trees, sending a shiver down my spine. She didn't wait for me to answer. She turned and sprinted deeper into the labyrinth of trees, and instinct kicked in. I followed her closely, fueled by adrenaline. We weaved through the thick underbrush, the forest enveloping us like a maze. My heart thundered at the thought of those hollow eyes, the darkness that had chased me, the uncertainty of what might still be lurking nearby. Just as I thought we might find some semblance of safety, the ground beneath began to shift, an unfamiliar sensation that left me feeling disoriented and unsure of our path. "Where are we going?" I gasped, trying to keep pace with her long strides. "Towards the ridge. There's an old ranger station just beyond. It may have supplies and—" Her voice trailed off as she skidded to a halt. Her expression changed as if she sensed something before she could see it. "What?" I whispered. "It's close," she breathed, eyes widening. "I can feel it." The tension stiffened the air. I could almost taste the fear hanging between us. The growl returned, closer, more menacing this time. It echoed through the woods, and I felt sudden urgency tugging at me. We pushed forward, the sounds of branches snapping and low growls growing more pronounced. I gripped the knife tighter, worried that whatever was out there would soon find us. Just as the dim light of dawn began to filter through the branches, we stumbled into a clearing. A weathered ranger station stood before us. The structure leaned precariously, encased in overgrowth, as if nature was slowly claiming it back. My heart sank at the thought of whether it could offer us safety or be another trap amidst the forest's tricks. "Can we make it?" I asked. She nodded, her voice firm but laced with fear. "Inside. We can barricade ourselves until the sun fully rises." We rushed to the door, but it was warped and stubborn, refusing to budge. I pushed against it, panic bubbling inside. "Hurry!" She shoved her shoulder against the door, and with a final grunt, it creaked open. We tumbled inside and quickly swung the door shut. The sound of it clicking into place felt like a small victory. But the moment of relief was short-lived as the growl echoed closer, vibrating through the walls around us. "Do you have anything?" she asked, frantically searching the small space lined with dusty shelves and empty cabinets. "Just this," I replied, holding up the knife, feeling its reassuring weight, but doubting its effectiveness against whatever was hunting us. Her eyes flared with realization. "We need to barricade the windows." We moved quickly, piling discarded furniture against the windows, heart pounding as the sounds of the creature drew near. Outside, a cacophony of growls simmered beneath the stillness like thunderclouds gathering. The floor creaked ominously beneath our feet, as if the very cabin was terrified of what approached. "What is it?" I gasped, looking at her with desperate eyes. "It's not just a Wendigo," she murmured, glancing out a small, cracked window. "There are more dangers here tied to the land itself. They're drawn to the fear and disarray." Fear tightened around my heart. Was that it? Were we only amplifying the darkness? The very energy we brought to these woods could be calling more to us. She turned back, determination flashing in her eyes. "We have to find a way out. There has to be a path from the ridge, and if we reach the outskirts of the park, we might find someone who can help." Her resolve was infectious, and amidst my racing heart, I felt a flicker of hope glimmering. "Let's move," I agreed, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. The growls grew louder, shaking the walls, a dark promise lingering in the air. I followed her lead, gut clenched but resolute as we prepared to navigate whatever dangers awaited us outside. The moment we opened the door, the light of dawn broke through the treetops, bathing the world in gold, but casting long shadows at our feet. A reminder that though we may have survived the night, questions still lingered. What was real? What had we truly encountered? And most haunting of all, was it really over or merely just beginning? As we stepped out, I felt the weight of the forest behind us, an unseen force watching, waiting. I could still feel eyes on me, those unrelenting shadows casting doubt on every step. All I knew was that the forest held its secrets close, and I had become part of the story, lost amidst its whispers and echoes forever marked by that unending darkness.